Well, welcome, ladies and gents. I'm going to talk into the void. This is mostly a test because I've never done this before. So we're going to figure this out. But I got to do this because if I'm going to talk about as much as I want to talk about in the coming months, for time purposes, I'm going to have to do some lives. So I'll talk into the void tonight. Probably won't have a lot of views, but if you are in the chat tonight, please give me your opinions. Now, I posted my Traitors video last week, the end of last week, talking about the cast for the US version, season 3. And I talked about my usual people that I actually know, from Big Brother, from Survivor, a couple of the housewives I kind of know, but I wanted to do some research to actually talk about the people that I don't know so well. Because in that video, there was people I had to skip over because I've never watched The Bachelor in my life. And there was a couple other people, like the person from England, that I didn't do that much research from or about. But let's talk about the two Bachelor people first. Now, my research was clips of them on The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. We'll start with Wells Adams, who in his clips anyway, he just seems like a nice guy, which isn't the worst thing because I do feel as though that's what makes a good faithful or can make a good faithful. It could also make you a faithful that gets screwed over, like we did see at the end of season 2. I just hope Wells isn't a traitor. I talked about Jeremy from Survivor, who I feel like because he's known as a kind of hero on Survivor, that it would be interesting to watch him as a traitor because of that. I don't feel the same way regarding Wells because he just seems like a nice guy and all, but I just don't want to see him as a traitor. I think he will make for a good faithful. Do I think he'll make entertaining television? That's not the vibe I got from the clips that I watched of him. However, the other Bachelor person was Gabby Windy or something to that effect. I also watched her clips and I liked her. I liked the fact that she stood up for herself on her Bachelor season, where the Bachelor was kind of playing the whole "I'm in love with both of you," and she turned him down. That's what I gathered from the clips anyway. So she seems like someone who is not afraid to obviously stand up for herself, but also just someone who has she has emotional intelligence. That's what I gathered from the clips that I watched of Gabby on The Bachelor. And I do feel like that can be good in a game like the Traitors. Whether you're faithful at or a traitor, I do feel like that is something that helps you in a social game in general. So watching clips of Gabby made me look more forward to Gabby, since I knew nothing about her in the other video I talked about. I also watched some clips of Tom Sandoval. I talked about him on the video last week for the Traders that he has this reputation now because he cheated on Ariana. And from watching clips of Vanderpump Rules, I'm looking forward to him even more. I think because he's coming out of that show with a reputation now, I really hope he embraces the possible villain role that he's going to find himself in. And I just posted a video about Dubai Bling that nobody's going to watch because I don't think anybody from America really watches it on Netflix. But it is a very dramatic show. And it's so good because the people on that show are not afraid to embrace their villainness. And I do feel like that is something that, well, I don't feel like that's something he will do necessarily, but I'm hoping that that is something that he will do. So yeah, I already was kind of looking forward to Tom because he was a villain coming out of that relationship cheating, but now I'm looking forward to him even more. Dorinda from Real Housewives of New York. I don't know if that's a season or a series that Q and I will ever cover from Housewives, but watching Dorinda, I do look forward to her on The Traitors. She is dramatic or has a knack for being dramatic or just not afraid to be in the drama. I think I said in my Traitors video that she was the only housewife that I was kind of looking forward to on the season. After watching some clips of her, I still feel that way. Well, kind of. I did watch some clips of Dolores as well from the Real Housewives of New Jersey, and there's potential there for entertainment. I might have been a little hard on her in the video last week because I just read about her and I read how she was voted Miss Congeniality across all the housewife brands, which has made me think that, oh, she's nice and likable, but does that make her good TV? I do feel now that she could be good TV this season on The Traitors. Sierra Miller from Summer House, somebody else I didn't know in last week's video. Most of the clips I found of her on YouTube is just arguing with people she's in relationships with or was in relationships with. I don't know if that is just what Summer House is. It's just a bunch of people going away together that are in relationships. I have no idea. Never watched it before. I did enjoy her watching her in the clips of Summer House. Sierra is not afraid to argue, and that's what I need from these people that aren't used to competition reality. Something that's made the Traitors good is not just the gameplay, or at least the Traitors US good is not just the gameplay. It is the people that come onto these shows that are not afraid to cause drama or stir drama or be in the drama. Whether they're a faithful or a traitor, I pointed out Sandra last season in my last video and how she didn't like how a bunch of faithful was creating an alliance without her. And so she kind of tried to head a separate alliance against that alliance. And while that was gameplay, that was also just very dramatic. So I'm hoping someone like Sierra can bring that sort of stuff to this season of The Traitors. Last person is that guy from England, Lord Ivar. I still don't want to watch him on this season at all. I don't understand why they keep casting these randoms from England who I just find don't bring a whole lot. Like I can see this Lord Ivar guy getting the cringy Big Brother type edit where it's supposed to be funny, but it's actually just cringy. That's what I don't want to see from this Lord Ivar person, but that's what I'm expecting to see, and that's very disappointing. If so, I just wish he would have just stayed eating or drinking tea and eating crumpets. But yeah, that's about all. I think those are all the people from the Traitors that I didn't know that I did research on by watching clips of them. Um, so I'm going to move on as I talk into the void here to discuss a little bit of Days of Our Lives. This is just going to be my venting session for the rest of this live tonight because I don't usually talk about wrestling on this channel much anymore, and starting to talk about soap operas a little more. But today's Days of Our Lives episode was everything that I hate about this show. It was the quintessential bad Ron episode where he and the other writers just sit around and they do all these wink, wink, nudge, nudge references to soap operas of the past. There was something about a company called Spalding Lewis, which is a shout out to Guiding Light, which is like fine. You could do all these shout outs to past soap operas. That's a-okay. But when that seems to be like the only thing you're willing to do and not actually give us some good, compelling storylines, it's like this is why nobody watches soap operas in America anymore. And it's why we're all of us American soap opera fans are just sitting here hoping that Beyond the Gates can kind of save the genre, which I would like to be positive and be like, "Oh, yeah, Beyond the Gates is going to save American soap operas." But deep inside, I have this negative feeling because if you look at all these American soap operas from the past, I don't know, I would say since 2005, honestly. So the past 20 years now, when the writing just truly deteriorated on all of the American soap operas, it just leaves me with no hope that Beyond the Gates can save the genre. But I'm definitely looking forward to Beyond the Gates and want to hope for the best where that show is concerned. But looking at today's day's episode, I just hated all the wink, wink, nudge, nudge stuff to past soap operas. They had a reference to Babe on All My Children when she was recasted like mid hug. And I suppose that's funny in some way to some people. But when that's what the entire episode is made up of, I think it's just turn the TV off kind of television. It's why I've had a struggle in watching Ron's Days for just so long now. So I'm hoping that Paula and Jean, when they become head writers, even though we have to wait another 4 or 5 months, they need to really cut a lot of dead weight of the characters that Ron overuses, looking at Leo in that, but also just write for the right characters. With Drake passing away, I just feel as though the show kind of squandered the whole John and Marlena family. Like, Brady's been the only child that has gotten so much screen time over the past 2 decades. And a part of that is like, yeah, they ran through a lot of Bal and Sean storylines when they were younger back in the 2000s. And it's good to see Bal and Sean back on the show now, but I just don't like the past decade or more now. Bal and Sean just not a part of the canvas. And I think that is a big hole. Carrie has been off the show for so long, John's, well, Roman's daughter, but that's still a part of the bigger family. Sammy's not on the show anymore either. Marlena's daughter. Hello, Kaiwan. Hello, Isaiah. Good to see people in the chat. I'm going to read this. Isaiah, I'd say 2003 was when the writing for soaps fell off. GH was at its lowest point yet, and B&B started the decline. I can agree with that, actually, Isaiah. For most shows, I still think that it completely fell apart for me closer to 2005. Like Days was off the rails by 2003 and 4. But I still felt like As the World Turns was strong until the mid 2000s. I feel like Young and the Restless was strong until the mid 2000s. G8's, I have to agree with you on that. Same with All My Children. One Life to Live, maybe. I don't remember when Dina Higley was the head writer on One Life to Live, but whenever she was the head writer, that's when One Life to Live was at its worst. But I think saying 2003 is fair to when the soaps fell off. Anyway, this was kind of the end of my soap opera rant, but I'm glad you two got in here. Two of my longest soap opera watchers from back 2 years ago when I used to talk about soap operas. Are you two going to be watching Beyond the Gates? I'm assuming so. I feel like my last rant is not about soap operas. I have to rant about the WWE real quick because that's what's really been grinding my gears. Kaiwan says, yes, I've been watching Beyond the Gates. I gotta find a way to. Do you live in the US, Kaiwan? If you have Paramount, I think you should be able to watch Beyond the Gates on Paramount, like the other CBS soap operas. Anyway, WWE did have their first Netflix Raw last night, and it just was such a big disappointment. You're moving to Netflix, and you can make this big splash all around the world, maybe gain new fans because Netflix has so many subscribers. You're coming off of USA Network, where it's been for so long now overall. And I felt like they failed in every single aspect. One, all of the matches last night were the same to me. And it's a modern wrestling problem overall where you're supposed to have finishing moves that are supposed to finish people. You're supposed to be able to hit that move, and that ends the match. And yet, in every single match last night, everyone was kicking out of everyone's finishers, which to me just takes away the psychology of any match. You're supposed to have a psychology to tell a storyline, but if every single match is telling the same storyline, and last night every single match was just a bunch of kicking out of everything, then every single match is telling the same storyline. And I don't know why they decided to do that last night on their big Netflix debut. Like, I felt like they wanted to make it like it was this big event, like it was a pay-per-view. So they wanted every match to seem epic, I guess, but that wasn't the way to do it. But that seems to be the modern way that both WWE and AEW love to do it. But I also didn't understand why on their first show on Netflix, where you're reaching a new audience, you decide to make it an event where you're kind of ending feuds and not starting new storylines. They ended, well, I don't think they like completely ended it, but they ended the whole bloodline storyline with the big Solo versus Roman match. They ended the Liv and Rhea storyline that's been going on for way too long. And then they ended the CM Punk and Seth Rollins storyline that's been going on for over a year now. But the only thing that they started last night was John Cena returning to have his last hurrah. This will be his final calendar year as a wrestler. And they're setting up this storyline where he hasn't won in years because he's barely returned over the years. But every time he's returned, he lost. He's going to enter the Royal Rumble, try and win the championship again, which would be a record amount of times of somebody winning the championship. That's fine. I have never been the biggest Cena fan, but at least they set up one story, I guess. But the rest of the show was ending stories. So how are you supposed to turn on a new audience by ending all your stories on your first episode on Netflix? I just felt a lot of last night was mind-numbingly bad in the decision-making of your first show on Netflix. Their appearances of Undertaker was kind of lackluster. Hogan was god awful. He got booed out of the building. And I don't think it was necessarily because his politics. You know, I'm sure a lot of it had to do with that. You know, maybe his racism. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with that too. But at the end of the day, if you strip away his politics, you strip away his racial incident of the past, he's just a terrible person who does nothing but lie. Watch any Hulk Hogan video with him talking about all the stuff he did, all the stuff he created, and then watch videos of other wrestlers responding to him, calling out his lies. You'll see that Hulk Hogan has just always been about Hulk Hogan. So his appearance, I think, also soured the whole show because the audience booed him. It was not what they were going for. Let's see what Isaiah was saying. And Kaiwan says, I haven't really watched wrestling in years, but that sounds crazy on Netflix. It could have been crazy. I think they dropped the ball in that first episode, though. Isaiah said, Goozer writing Beyond the Gates makes me somewhat wary, but it looks good by trailers. I agree, Isaiah. I'm going to make a Beyond the Gates video in the next couple of weeks to talk about that. That was one of my things. You know, Ron is also on the writing team in a way. And just judging by the Days of Our Lives talk in this video, I hate Ron's writing. But Guza, I am wary because while he's very good at these big events, he's not so great at like characters. I feel like he's very plot driven, not enough character driven, which isn't the worst thing, but I'm going to give him a chance, I think. Yes, the Republicans did enjoy Hulk Hogan at the Republican National Convention. He's washed up, though. He's very much washed up. And he's a liar and a terrible person. Anyway, this is my short first live. I wanted to test this out because I don't always have time to edit videos as much as I used to. Let's see, Kaiwan says, because there's a new soap out, he can complete it clean. It is a clean slate. I think, like, with the Ron's just a breakdown writer on Beyond the Gates. So it's not like he has power, which is good. But Guza does have power as a co-head writer. So he is the one to be wary about for now. If Ron gets any more power at Beyond the Gates, though, if he moves up the writing food chain, it's a no-go for me on Beyond the Gates if Ron gets any higher on the food chain. All right, guys. Thank you, Isaiah and Kaiwan. Whoever else is in the chat, if you join me again, please talk to me because I don't like talking into the void because I'm already kind of awkward on a live. This is my first one. All right, I'm going to end it here. Thanks for watching. I'm going to probably do this again Friday for the Traitors. Even though I'll probably cover the first episode in just a regular video on Thursday after the premiere.